Welcome to Laptop Radio. Today's topic is MachineFi and the decentralized machine economy. We have Larry Peng with us. He is the head of business development at IOTEX. Hello, Larry. How are you?
Doing great, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me on Laptop Radio. Share more about a new topic in Web3 that I think is really interesting, the intersection of the Internet of Things and blockchain. Excited to dive in.
Yeah, I actually love this one. I met IOTEX a couple of years ago in Palo Alto. We discussed about privacy and different machines. I'm actually really excited about how this project has progressed over the last couple of years. Larry, why don't you introduce us to yourself?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Larry Peng, head of business development here at IOTEX, was part of the founding team when IOTEX got started back in 2017. A little background on myself. I graduated from MIT in 2013, studied econ and finance there and went into consulting at a shop called Oliver Wyman. And Oliver Wyman strategy consulting firm worked with a lot of big tier one banks and financial institutions. But I was lucky enough to kind of sit at the intersection of business, technology, and operations, learned how to speak the language of all these different functions, which has really helped me in this new kind of project at IOTEX. I stayed at Oliver Wyman for 5 years, left as an engagement manager, and joined IOTEX in 2017 as part of the founding team. And since then, we've been really just building out infrastructure for what we call MachineFi. We really have a vision that tamper-proof hardware plus tamper-proof software in the form of blockchain is going to provide a lot of tamper-proof applications that return power and value to the people. And we get to work across a lot of different verticals that use machine, everything from smart home to automotive to agriculture to weather to all the things that are becoming more digitized in our daily lives. Yeah, we're just closing a funding round with Samsung and a lot of these other big IoT players, kind of bringing the traditional world into Web3. Excited to dive in throughout this pod.
Awesome. What inspires the project at the beginning?
Yeah, in the beginning, it was really all about bringing power back to the people. Web3 space all started with Bitcoin back in 2009, which focused on a big problem today, which is a lot of the control and a lot of the rules of how money works was in the hands of very big gatekeepers in the sense of business, banks, central banks. And we're seeing that even more as a hot topic today. Who controls the value? Who controls inflation? Who controls the money supply? And when you think about it, it's not just money that has this issue. It's also who controls all the machines out there. To give some context on the Internet of Things, by 2030, McKinsey estimates there's going to be 100 billion machines out there, connected machines, producing 80 zettabytes of data. That's 80 trillion gigabytes of data. And McKinsey estimates this Internet of Things all around us is going to be worth $12.6 trillion in value. And the big question that we always ask ourselves from the beginning is, okay, if all these facts are true, then who's going to own these devices? Who's going to own this data? And who's going to own all this value? If we do nothing, then the big tech gatekeepers that are kind of like the central banks of the tech ecosystem are going to hold all of our data, and they're going to continue to mine it. They're going to continue to profit from it, and they're going to continue sharing none of it with the general population. Web3 and blockchain is a really good way to allow people to not only own their devices and own their data, but also manage it and monetize it and utilize it however which way they want. That's kind of like the driving force behind why IOTEX was started, and also why we continue to press forward today. Is really a future view that the world can work in a different way that I think is more intuitive and more user-centric.
How is the blockchain usually integrated into a machine?
That's a good question. Blockchain to start, for those that aren't too familiar with it, there's so many different flavors of blockchain that you see, but as an infrastructure layer, blockchain is a distributed system where many people will collectively own and manage the network, and everything is transparent. Everything is open source. Blockchain as a trusted foundation is a really interesting infrastructure to power different types of applications. A lot of people consider blockchains to be tamper-proof, meaning no single entity can just go in and change the rules. We have these rules changed around us all the time, whether it's Google's terms and conditions or even your airline provider's loyalty points. These are all vertically integrated silos where the companies that own them pitch that these things are for the people, for their customers, but on a whim, those rules can change. With a blockchain, these rules are collectively decided, collectively governed, and collectively enforced. This concept of having tamper-proof software or tamper-proof infrastructure to power different applications is very powerful. But in addition to the software side, there's also a lot of hardware out there that operates in the same way. The concept of having tamper-proof hardware that just does what it's told and
Mhm.
people can verify it because it's open source, combined with tamper-proof software that just does what it's told, produces the opportunity to create tamper-proof applications where everything is verifiable, everything is trusted. And that's a really big concept today. Who and why we trust, I think, is one of the biggest challenges of our generation. And when we think about all the digital things, all the devices, all the machines that we interact with on a daily basis, sometimes you can look at a security camera outside and be like, is this thing working for me? Or is it funneling data to a source that's not working for me? When we think about connecting devices to the blockchain, there's two very big components which IOTEX uniquely layers on top of our blockchain technology. One is identity and one is data ownership. And for the identity piece, it's really important to understand who owns this device and whether this device has a trusted identity or not before you accept data from it.
Did an IEEE standard to figure out this decentralized identity piece. And the other piece that's really important is understanding, translating what a device says into something that a blockchain or a smart contract can understand. And there's a big concept in Web3 called oracles, where you're pulling data from devices or from some database and instructing a blockchain to do something with it. As a platform, we've built out a full stack platform from our layer one blockchain infrastructure that does things like accounts, transactions, etc. But we layer on these IoT-oriented middleware protocols to ensure we can trust a device before we accept data from it, and we can translate what's happening in the real world based on what a device captures and senses into something that can be used as an input to some type of business logic through a smart contract. Those are kind of the pillars that make IOTEX as a platform really unique, but we're not the ones that build these applications. We work with a lot of developers, projects, even enterprises to build this new type of tech stack and these new types of applications that allow us to trust our devices and monetize the data and the value from our devices in a more trusted way.
Awesome. Could users or consumers purchase these devices directly from the company?
Yeah, we got started back in 2017. We spent the first 3 years really building out the underlying protocol, the underlying platform. And starting in 2020, we really became the first customers of our own platform. The platform itself is open source. Anyone can build on it. You don't need permission from anyone to do it. That's another important piece of blockchain. But we became the first customers of our own platform in a mission to kind of show people what's possible. No one knows the platform better than we do. And I think we brainstorm about these new types of use cases more than anyone on the planet. So we actually created 2 of the first blockchain-powered devices over the past few years. One of them is called UCAM. UCAM is a privacy-preserving security camera. It basically uses a blockchain-based identity to ensure people own their data and their videos exclusively. Just like if you have a Bitcoin wallet, you own those funds exclusively. You're the only one that can access them. We use that methodology to power this security camera called UCAM. But it's less of a your keys, your money model. It's a your keys, your data model. Okay. And that won the CES Innovation Award for cybersecurity and personal privacy back in 2020. There's about 15,000 of these cameras being used by people all over the world today. But one thing that it didn't do is it didn't stream your videos to the blockchain. It's just using that decentralized identity, user-owned data, user-owned identity framework to create a new type of security camera that provides more assurances than what you would get with a Google Cloud camera or an Amazon Ring camera, where you don't know where that data is going or what they're doing with it behind the scenes. Our next evolution of that was to also apply this same own your data model, but also to stream data directly to the blockchain with this new device called a Pebble Tracker. It was originally designed for supply chain use cases. It's loaded with different types of sensors like GPS, temperature, humidity, motion, vibration, light. Really provides a nice 360 view of whatever asset that's being tracked, whether it's a person, a dog, a container, a vehicle, but very importantly, it has a secure chip in it that will sign the data as it's being captured with one's blockchain identity. People can know that, yes, this data came from a trusted device, and also this data is owned by this on-chain identity, which allows people to opt in to use it in different types of smart contracts. We see a lot of people using UCAM as a tool for service level agreements. if you're shipping something that needs to be under a certain temperature, this device kind of acts like a unbiased third party that builds trust amongst the service level agreement issuer and whoever is shipping that product. But it's really expanded now to being a tool for developers to build all sorts of prototypes. One of my favorite use cases that I've seen of Pebble Tracker is to use the GPS location, which again is verifiable and can be traced back to a certain person or a certain device, and use that trusted GPS location to trigger different incentives to be delivered. If you go to a specific place at a specific time and use your Pebble Tracker to prove it, then you can claim an NFT, or you can get some type of authorization to get a token airdrop or other types of permissions, a big design space. And now, after having these kind of two devices, UCAM and Pebble Tracker, we are now inspiring other companies to build similar products and similar devices. We get to work with a lot of people doing stuff with Raspberry Pi and Arduino, but also packaged products like weather stations, even OBD2 sensors that you plug into your vehicle to capture that data, healthcare wearables. All of these things are ways to prove things that people or businesses do in the real world and allow developers to tie different types of token incentives to them. It's just a really exciting design space, kind of connecting the real world to this budding Web3 world. We're really excited about that.
I've been pretty passionate about X to earn, especially certain apps that when you move, you earn coins. Are you implementing those kind of gamified experiences onto hardware and IoT devices?
Yeah, X to earn is a really interesting category of applications. There's another one that I want to talk about. It's more about bringing together similar devices to create some type of public utility that allows people that contribute to the network to be fractional owners of that. But the X to earn thing is really blowing up lately in the Web3 space. And for those that are not familiar, X to earn is just kind of a category of applications where people are doing things in the real world to earn token incentives. We live in a very penalty-based world today, where if you do something bad, you're penalized for it. But just like you go to your job every day and you're incentivized to work harder because of some type of bonus structure or some type of incentive structure, what X to earn is using your devices to prove things about what you do on a daily basis in order to earn incentives that can be encoded into these smart contracts. Very, very popular space right now is in the healthcare space. If you have data that your healthcare wearable, like your Fitbit or your Apple Watch, is collecting, whether it's the number of steps you've taken or your heart rate throughout the day, these are data points that can prove to people that you're doing something good for yourself. A lot of these X to earn concepts is if you take 10,000 steps a day and burn 200 active calories, then you can get some type of micro incentive on a daily basis. There's a lot of other use cases around drive to earn, where if you prove that you never drive over the speed limit, or you always have your seatbelt on based on the electronic control units in your vehicle. These are ways to prove that you're being safe. And you can imagine insurance companies can deliver micro incentives, not just at the end of the year if you don't get in an accident, but on a daily basis if you prove that you're a good driver. Even things like sleep to earn sounds really silly and stupid, but imagine that you're an employer and you want to incentivize your employees to get at least 7 hours of sleep on a Sunday night. You go to work fresh on a Monday. These micro incentives can be delivered where devices are kind of the proofs of what people do in the real world, and Web3 and blockchains can be the incentive delivery mechanism. We just talked about 3 types of devices, but there's so many different categories of devices out there, from the phones that you carry that are collecting information about what you do and where you go and even who you talk to. All that data is just going to like a Google or an Amazon or an Apple server right now. But if you point that data to a blockchain, it can be repurposed to deliver these types of incentives and really change behavior. Like changing someone's behavior in the real world is probably one of the hardest things to do. But if you think about the best way to do that, delivering incentives on a continuous basis about putting into people's minds that say, hey, I'm kind of tired today, but I know that if I take another 2,000 steps, I'm going to get this type of incentive. Or I know that, hey, maybe I didn't want to go to this event before, but I know there's an incentive tied to me attending. It's just a really great way to change that behavior.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Yeah. The other category that I think is also interesting is all these 100 billion devices out there in the world today, they all have a primary purpose, which is to serve its owner. Whether it's a weather station that you put on top of your house so you can better understand weather patterns for yourself, or your vehicle that's obviously working for you to bring you from point A to point B. But when these devices aren't in use and stationary, blockchain is also a great way to reallocate these resources that are sitting there. Your phone, your laptop, your vehicle, all these devices have a lot of compute and memory and storage
Yeah.
resources that people pay a lot of money for. You go to Amazon Web Services or Google, you're going to pay for compute memory storage from their farm of servers that could be distributed globally. But what if we could repurpose the utility of these unused devices to serve a greater good? I think the weather example is a really interesting concept where today, if we were to try to build a user-owned and decentralized weather network, we could put together all the data from different weather stations out there and create our own decentralized weather index. And for those in the weather industry, people should know that weather data is extremely valuable for hedge funds, for nat gas traders, for selling to weather.com to feed their models. And today, even if there was a mechanism to share your weather data, there's not a great mechanism to fractionalize the profits and share it with those that contributed.
Yeah.
If you think about weather stations, as the number of devices grows linearly, the value of the data will grow non-linearly, even maybe exponentially, because these data have network effects. It's really thinking about how to use Web3 and blockchain to put together a lot of resources from a more of a bottoms up capacity and making people fractional owners of the products that they contribute to. Waze is another great example. Waze is an app that users are always tagging different parts of a map, whether there's a pothole, there's a police officer around the corner, there are points of interest here and there. Waze got sold to Google for many billions of dollars, maybe in 2016. But where is the value for all the people that contributed to the Waze product? Yes, they're getting a free service, which is a cool maps app. But if you ask me, the people that made Waze a valuable product should have earned a little bit of the returns on the product they helped to create. This is another use case that blockchain can really provide, is to provide trust about who delivered what and deliver those incentives, those that actually contribute to creating these products.
Let's talk about mining for a little bit. Behind each one of these IoT devices, you can also mine. How does that usually work behind the scene? And who's mining these machines?
Yeah, that's a great example of this kind of fractional ownership model that I just mentioned. For those that don't know how the Bitcoin network works, everyone knows what Bitcoin is today as this kind of borderless, no single owner digital currency. But the way that it's maintained is you have all these miners out there that purchase these specialized mining rigs called ASICs. And Bitcoin itself is a protocol, meaning it's an open source piece of code that all of these mining rigs will run. And the way that Bitcoin works is it's collectively maintained. There's a consensus mechanism where all of the mining rigs are doing the exact same thing and verifying each other's work, rather than having a single entity like a central bank manage the money supply. You have all these different devices and mining rigs around the world running a protocol to deliver the same type of experience as you would trusting some type of centralized intermediary to do. And what these mining rigs are doing is periodically, these mining rigs are challenging each other to solve a very computationally and honestly energy intensive puzzle. Whoever solves that puzzle, which is called the hash function, earns the right to produce the next Bitcoin block and earn Bitcoin reward. So that's the incentive. Web3 and blockchain is all about incentives, even at the infrastructure layer. All these people that are setting up servers and mining rigs are incentivized to do so. These mining rigs aren't cheap, but it becomes a business at the end of the day. So that's kind of how Bitcoin works. It's kind of the proof of work model. Whoever proves that they've done the work to kind of solve that puzzle and establish security in the Bitcoin network will earn the incentives for doing so. And the proof of work model doesn't have to stop with Bitcoin. We can also prove work that we've done in the real world and earn those incentives. Consensus and these kind of proof of X mechanisms are what kind of powers blockchain, but there's many varieties of them. Ethereum is going to be kicking off their proof of stake mechanism, which is more around prove to the blockchain that you've deposited a certain number of assets into the chain for security, and you can receive some incentives for doing that in the form of mining rewards as well. But yeah, we have a concept of IOTEX called proof of anything. What if these proofs didn't have to be prove to me you've allocated some network resources or prove to me that you've deposited some money into
Yeah.
the smart contract? It could be prove to me that you walked 5 miles, prove to me that you got good sleep, prove to me that you've submitted valuable data to a collective ecosystem. There's a lot of different angles that blockchain Web3 can take once you bring in hardware and devices into the picture.
How will you integrate breeding to IOTEX?
What is it? Breathing?
Breeding, yeah. Like,
Breeding?
yeah,
Like BREEDING?
yeah.
That's an interesting one. Like breeding horses or breeding
Yeah,
humans?
like breeding shoes, breeding horses, breeding.
Yeah.
I know that the focus is on hardware, and I know that there is going to be incentives and tokenomics, and there's going to be proof of X, and there could be X to earn, or even fractionalized ownership, as you said.
Yeah.
In a lot of the game economics,
Mhm.
sometimes you can have software items or different items that breed and produce new
Oh, right.
shoes.
That's a very common model in the NFT space. And yeah, I think that's an interesting use case, but that's more like a gamification type of layer on top of the blockchain. For those that play a lot of games and have seen some of the media headlines about games like Axie Infinity or some of these play to earn games. Before we had X to earn, there was play to earn. It kind of kicked off this category. All right. This is more about the fact that blockchains can be great foundations or stores of value for different types of assets, one of which is a non-fungible token or an NFT. An NFT is basically a digital representation of value. A lot of people use this and it's non-fungible, meaning if you had a piece of art or a digital art, you can issue an NFT which assigns ownership rights to whoever holds this NFT, meaning you own that piece of digital art. Very interesting when you think about licensing and intellectual property rights. I think NFTs have gone off the deep end a little bit. A lot of craziness around these Bored Apes and CryptoPunks, which are more like collectibles. But the next evolution of NFTs, I really think about it like I used to be a photographer back in high school and did a lot of film photography. And if you think about if you take a film photo, you will own that negative. There's this one negative out there, and the biggest photographers in the world that own their negatives will decide, hey, I'm going to make 100 prints of this photograph. I'm going to sell them. And there's never going to be any more that exist out there. I think an NFT is very similar to that, where if you're a digital art creator or you're an intellectual property creator, or you've created something of digital value, you have the ability to issue as many copies as you wish and distribute them in a digital format. So I really think about NFTs as almost like a digital version of film photography, which is a really interesting concept to think about. When you're talking about these breeding kind of things, it's almost like you take two types of NFTs and you combine them to create T or another something of value. Right? And that's the gamification layer of these digital assets, where these assets can live on the blockchain, but you can also layer them on top of each other with different types of business logic in the form of smart contracts. Say that you've earned NFTs for going to several different types of events, or we're working with a really interesting company in the travel space that wants to issue NFTs every time you purchase a flight to a certain area, where you can get kind of a digital souvenir. Purchase the ticket to Paris, purchase a ticket to Berlin, get a Paris and a Berlin NFT. And what happens when you put both of those together, maybe you get another NFT that gets you a discount on a flight. That's really like the gamification of these digital assets that live on blockchains. But yeah, I think that's a really interesting concept to think about, especially when you think about the gamification of things that we're doing in the real world. That's really this X to earn concept, tying incentives to physical actions and not just digital actions.
Yeah, I love that. I love going to different places and being able to breed and getting a discount to somewhere, or even an NFT about something else.
Yeah.
I wanted to go over more of a DAO concept of co-ownership. I know we talk about fractionalized ownership, and I think that's awesome. In terms of co-creating a hardware, I think it's a little bit different. It's more difficult, and people may not have the same skill set to do it. However, there could be a group of people that could have ideas, and they could contribute with their ideas to create another machine. The concept of DAOs, how could that be integrated into MachineFi?
Yeah, this is actually one of my favorite topics to think about, because You look at what the DAO space looks like today. DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. And if you look at all the DAOs out there today, if you ask me, not many of them are decentralized and not many of them are autonomous. They're just organizations that are digital. And that's due to the fact that humans have a lot of biases. DAOs are meant to create an environment where people that contribute to a common goal can own a fraction of whatever product that is, whether it's an investment DAO. I put in $1,000, you put in $2,000, we invest that to make $5,000, then I own the piece of what I've contributed. Or maybe there's a way to fractionalize the amount of work or some type of product that's been created. Maybe it's a data pool or something. But with humans, it's always hard because humans can say one thing and maybe what's actually happened is something different, right? When I think about DAOs, I think machine DAOs are going to be a really big part of our future because machines, unlike humans, don't have biases, at least for now. And there's a lot of talk about T3 and all these AI things in the news about Google, AI engineers and things like that. But let's throw that out the window for a second. Imagine if you have in the future an autonomous vehicle DAO. All these vehicles are taking instructions from a protocol, delivering a service and earning money based on it. And it's very different than having a autonomous human workforce because the human workforce may, again, say something that they've done, but maybe they actually did it in a different way, or they've only done half of it. Machines don't lie. Hardware that doesn't lie combined with software that doesn't lie produces results that can be fully trusted. I think machine DAOs are a really, really, really interesting concept. And in the future, when you think about machines almost as cash flow generating assets, a vending machine, a airport locker, laundromats, these are all already autonomous businesses in themselves. But when you think about all the data and the value that other types of machines can produce, it starts to become very interesting where these blockchain-based protocols are the coordination mechanisms, the orchestration mechanisms that will allocate these machine resources to provide some type of value. Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up. I think about this concept a lot. But before we get there, I think we have to focus on machines serving humans in these kind of X to earn or fractional ownership models. But when a machine can coordinate with other machines to perform common goals, then we're starting to look a lot like the future. But the future has to be trusted. So that's why these DAOs and blockchain are so important.
Yeah. I would love a group of AIs joining a DAO and making up the rules and governing the entire body of AIs. That would be awesome.
Wait too long for that. I think that's a very close reality. But that's one other topic. I think we get asked a lot about how these technologies are all going to blend together. AI, IoT, blockchain. If you ask me, IoT is kind of the technology that will generate all this data, all these machines watching, sensing, listening. There's so much data that these devices produce. AI is going to be the technology that kind of extracts value from all of this data in a more machine learning and automated way. And finally, blockchain is going to be the one that adds trust to all these processes. Blockchain can be thought about almost as like the coach or the manager of all these devices and all these AI algorithms to make sure that nothing funny is happening behind the scenes. This is already happening today, but these tech stacks are owned by the Googles, the Amazons, the big tech companies of the world, where their devices are gathering data about us. Their AIs are extracting value out of that data, but there's no blockchain there to redistribute this value to the people. All of it's just going into the balance sheets of these big corporations.
I also think about a vendor DAO where a few people or even a group of people could own vending machines that are located everywhere around the world, and those data and the profit as well could be shared among the DAO. I think that's going to be really awesome, and that could start first before the AI's DAO, like one of the more advanced kind of DAOs.
Exactly. Vending machines are great. Vending machines, laundromats, airport lockers, all these like unmanned devices are honestly some of the best businesses you can start today because you don't have to hire people. They're open 24/7 oftentimes, and they produce very steady cash flows. But as this world kind of expands more, I think a lot about like drones and drone delivery and satellite and all these kind of other unmanned devices that if they're following some type of trusted instructions, can generate very predictable and very trusted cash flows, then these devices start to look like bonds, like financial bonds, where you can own the principal value of this machine and you can own the very predictable cash flows, kind of like an interest payment for a bond. Finding a way to make all that trustworthy, though, is a big challenge. The blockchain is not the silver bullet that's going to solve all of this. That's a very important point to make, but it's definitely going to be one of the many important technologies that make this more trustworthy. Transparency, open source technology, and yeah, collective, no single owner. These are all very important properties of what that future is going to look like.
In about 10 years, how would machines and MachineFi look like, even from a DeFi perspective?
Yeah, this MachineFi concept is, for those that aren't in the crypto space, it all started with DeFi, decentralized finance. And now you see GameFi. And now IOTEX has birthed this concept called MachineFi. And just like a little history on Web3, it's all about incentives. There's always someone incentivizing someone else to do something that they wouldn't necessarily do. It started with DeFi. These protocols incentivize people to deposit their assets into a smart contract to earn yield. GameFi incentivized people to do things in the digital world to earn digital assets. And now MachineFi is incentivizing people to do things in the real world to earn digital assets or digital reputation. And there's the whole category of MachineFi apps that we've been talking about, but I'm really excited for the intersection of MachineFi and GameFi, and also MachineFi and DeFi. So when you think about machines and what role they play in the metaverse, for example, one interesting thing is you work out in the real world and prove it with your healthcare wearable that you've run 5 miles or lifted this much weight. And maybe your metaverse character also gets stronger. It's not just you're purchasing like upgrades and NBA 2K points. It's you have to do something in the real world. Your GameFi metaverse character gets stronger. There's also the intersection of MachineFi and DeFi. If you have a prediction marketplace that says a weather insurance concept where you want to buy a weather insurance contract, and it's more of a peer-to-peer contract where you say, hey, if the median temperature goes over this amount, say that you own a farm and you want to buy some insurance on it, weather related, then your device can be the proof of what the actual temperature was to settle some type of financial contract, like an insurance premium. I think we're just getting started with all of this. There's so many different things in our world today that lack trust. And what we're talking about right now is just ways to redesign how things work, less from a top-down perspective, more from a bottoms-up perspective. But the bottoms-up perspective is the coordination game. How do you put together trusted devices with trusted algorithms, with trusted technologies across the board to recreate how society works? But yeah, it's not going to be an overnight thing, but I think for sure this is the way that the world is trending. Trust in institutions, trust in governments, trust in people that we talk to online. Sometimes we don't even know if these are bots or not. Trust overall is deteriorating, and the only way to fix that is to provide more transparency and allow people to verify for themselves what is true or not. That's really the concept.
What is the role of validators in MachineFi and in validating that there's trusted data and the data is also more accurate and have integrity?
Yeah, that's a good question. This is a very important piece of how these decentralized networks work. In the beginning of this pod, I mentioned that blockchains themselves are distributed systems, meaning it's not just one single server or one single entity that is managing everything. Like if I wanted to send you some money today, then Bank of America or our bank is sitting in the middle of that and facilitating that. It's almost like you take Bank of America or whatever intermediary that provides some type of service, and you split that responsibility across many, many people or many nodes or validators. So these validators all have to collectively agree that Larry sent Michelle $2. And then those validators can update the credits and the debits between our accounts appropriately. Same exact thing that a Bank of America or some type of other intermediary would do, except the fact that it's not just one single person that could be error prone or manipulable. It's all these people that have to collectively agree that the thing that was requested was done in the right way. It's more of a consensus across many trusted parties is the thing that delivers that capability versus let's just trust this single entity and pray that they're not doing things behind the scenes. That's more of the money side of things, but the data piece is also really important. There's so many claims out there that, hey, we care about your privacy, we care about your security. Well, just because you care and put out these marketing statements doesn't mean that behind the scenes in this black box server, everyone's seeing all these shows on Netflix about the social dilemma and what all these things are going on behind the scenes. There's just not really an alternative right now. That's why getting people to change their behavior is a little hard, and get off of Instagram, get off of these social media platforms that they know are advertising and watching and really just dissecting our lives. But yeah, digressing a little bit here, but I think collective trust is really important.
Yeah, I know that some of these social media have been using data and our human behavior aspects to influence us greatly. Is there anything that you wanted to share that I have not asked you?
Yeah, one thing I wanted to share is a little bit about our recent fundraising news. And I mentioned this not to show our fundraising news, but the fact that I think Web3 and blockchain now is at a point where it's not just a future looking concept or something that is too good to be true.
Yeah.
When we got started back in 2017, the receptiveness of the blockchain technology, not talking about cryptocurrencies, because there's a lot of cryptocurrencies out there that are questionable, but blockchain technology as a whole, I think has grown a lot. Where if you told us back in 2017 that Samsung and Qualcomm and some of these biggest IoT companies in the world would be our investors, that might sound too good to be true, because the environment, the atmosphere around blockchain back then was much different. But now I think everyone knows that blockchain-based systems and societies and ecosystems are here to stay. I'm not saying everything that's built on top of blockchains today is for the greater good. There's a lot of value extraction and a lot of crap that's being built on blockchains and slowly being weeded out by these bear markets. But yeah, we just closed a big fundraising round from folks like Draper, Samsung Next, Jump Crypto. And it's really exciting. The most exciting piece for me is having the venture arms of these large IoT enterprises buy into this concept, because it's really a tone change from them. They could have gone down the route of creating their vertically integrated companies forever, but they know that this desire from society for more trust and more transparency and user centricity is what the future looks like. Having them back us instead of compete directly against us in a completely different fashion, I think that's a really important milestone for us as a project. Really excited to share that piece.
Yeah, congratulations. I was thinking about the composability of MachineFi just earlier. Can you mention a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. Composability is kind of the ability to build things on top of other things that others have built, kind of the modularity of these open source ecosystems. And that's what open source technology is all about. You build a code base so others can build on top of it and extend it for their own purpose. When we think about IOTEX, we have a lot of different applications built on top of us, and now more and more devices as well. There's probably 100 plus applications on top of IOTEX across DeFi, GameFi, MachineFi stuff, even like services. And the really important piece is we're building an ecosystem. It's not just a closed application that does one thing. It's really putting together our infrastructure, our middleware, other people's services, other people's tools to enable these applications to flourish. And I think that's a really exciting piece, is that you have all these different people that are contributing mind share and technology. You're putting it all together to enable these applications to be built. And what this looks like down the road is, once you have a lot of these applications that are sourcing trusted data from one type of device, I mentioned the concept about network effects of data back earlier on this pod. And that's really the most exciting piece, is once we not only combine data within a single vertical, like all the healthcare data from wearables or all the automotive data from vehicles, but you start to intersect these categories of data. Like, what happens when weather data and healthcare data combine? What happens when agricultural data and weather data combine? What happens when healthcare data and smart home data combine? You still really start to think about all the intersections. Maybe the network effects aren't as strong as just thinking about the network effects of similar devices and similar data, but there's something there. We think a lot about how to mix geolocation with healthcare, with fitness you're really painting like a day in the life kind of picture where those incentives don't have to be one dimensional. They could be multi-dimensional. If you do this and you do this and you do this, and then you get some type of incentive. The design space is just going to expand as we bring on more partners and more devices, more types of data. That's really the composability long-term vision that I think I have.
Awesome. And what is one thing that you learned from Consensus in Austin this week?
Yeah, crypto is in kind of a slump right now. For those that don't follow the news, there's a lot of these Ponzi looking projects that are collapsing on themselves. Started with this project called Terra that was providing unsustainable yields for people that deposited their stable coins. Now this other project called Celsius, which also has a similar model as Terra. They source a lot of funds from retail users. They reinvest those funds to earn a lot of profit, and they share that profit with users. But these are, from the beginning, everyone knew that they were unsustainable, but the hype around crypto and the thought that these Ponzi's could last, I don't think that detracts from the long-term value or vision of blockchain as a whole. And that's the takeaway I had from Austin. We had so many conversations with not just our new investors, but big private equity shops. Some of the biggest companies in the world stopped by our booth, including Apple, who didn't tell us what they were up to, but they were just kind of observing what was happening in this space. But having everyone look at this space from a cleaner lens, I think is going to catapult this industry forward. 2017 or 2018, the last crash weeded out all of these ICOs, these initial coin offering projects. Now we're flash forwarding to the crash of 2022, where a lot of these centralized yield opportunity kind of projects are collapsing. And maybe the next cycle, we're going to see something else that really shouldn't have existed, or maybe was too good to be true, collapse. But with all these kind of things, progress is being made. Being in Austin, a Consensus was really refreshing. We had a lot of great conversations about real world utility, real world benefits for users. And there's a huge ecosystem of people building in crypto. Not all of them are building for the right reasons. There's a lot of value, a lot of money in this ecosystem, but the people that show up to these conferences are definitely the builder types. Great to connect with all those folks.
Where can people find the project or the company?
Yeah, you can follow us on social media. It's an open ecosystem that anyone can join. And as this kind of layer one blockchain, we get to interact with all sets of stakeholders, whether you're a user of our applications, whether you're a builder, whether you're an investor, whether you like to talk about tokenomics or governance. We have forums for all of that. Really advise people to start on our website, IOTEX.io, follow our Twitter, join our Telegram groups, our Discord groups, literally every single platform out there, even the international ones like Kakao and like Line. We have communities on all of them. And that's a really exciting part too. There's a very international type of movement that we have going on. Whatever you're interested in, there's something here. If you're interested in the intersection of hardware and software, I think we're the best place to start. But we have a lot of, ancillary interests in our community as well. Just a good place to hang out. Come hang with us.
What is one piece of advice you have for the community?
Good question. One piece of advice. I know this is being streamed on Stanford Radio. Well, I see a lot of interest in being an investor. I think being an investor is one of the most boring things you can do, because all you have to do is nitpick and evaluate what other people are doing and try to shoot it down. Go build a company. For such an entrepreneurial spirit, I don't think I need to tell people this, but in the past year or two, there's so many new VCs or seed VCs, and everyone looks like the smartest person in the world when the price is going up and everything collapsed, and then it's not the same story. But to be an investor down the road, you really have to go through the ringer. Join a young startup, really go through the trials and tribulations of doing things without help or many resources. For me, that was a huge jump. I was in consulting where I had all the resources in the world at my disposal, and joining a startup with 5 or 6 people, now we're about 40, 50 people. You get to see every layer of development. You start to really prioritize what's important and what's not important. That's my advice. Be a builder. Investors and investment will always be there, but having the know-how, I think it's a great time to build a company, especially in crypto. The hype is gone, at least for now in this bear market. Everyone's focused on just building things that matter. Yeah.
Awesome. I agree with you. Building a company is hard, but it's worth all the lessons and personal evolution, because you grow a lot as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Larry.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. We'll hopefully have another sync up on this in the future. But yeah, we do a lot of events out in the Bay Area. So come check us out sometime, all those people that are listening right now.
Awesome. Where are you based?
I'm based in Los Angeles, but most of the core team is out in San Francisco. I just moved recently, was based in San Francisco for about 5 years, but I was born and raised in SoCal, back in LA area.
Awesome. Awesome. I've learned about this project in Palo Alto. I think the project's awesome. It's grown a lot since I've heard about it the first time. Thank you again.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. We'll talk soon.
Talk soon. Bye-bye.